And welcome to Programme 20 of Hpanwo Radio. Hpanwo stands for Hospital Porters Against the New World Order. Tune in for all the latest news, views and reviews from the world of government cover-ups, ghosts, UFOs, hospital porters, paranormal investigation, hidden knowledge, forbidden history and archaeology, chemtrails, and more hospital porters. I am Ben Emlyn-Jones, and this show is intended to be a companion to the Hpanwo blog and Hpanwo TV YouTube channel. Now, that song was Road to Hell by Chris Rea. Now, there are several different versions of that, most of them just smaller, just short versions of the second part. But honestly, you can't beat this complete full version. And if you hadn't uploaded, I would have honestly just gone and chosen a different song. Right, tonight on Hpanwo Radio we have Neil Sanders, who is a researcher, an author and lecturer on the extremely important subject of mind control. Now, he has a website which is Neil Sanders Mind Control, which is all one word. It's a brand new website though, so it doesn't very easily come up in Google, but if you go to the Hpanwo Radio blog, you'll see there's a link there, so you can click that. Give us some time. Eventually, it will come up on searches and things like that. Now, Neil is the author of a book with a very chilling title, which is Your Thoughts Are Not Your Own. It's a 2-volume book, so there's volumes 1 and 2, and you can order them from his website. So that's coming up later. And we also have some news. Kevin Annett has some news about him, which is very important, which I've got to bring up. There's Darren Brown with his gaslighting, and I'm going to talk about vulnerable truthers. There's also going to be space weather and much, much more. Now, I love the new website design. If you go to the Critical Mass Radio homepage, you'll see that it's been completely revamped, and it's a lovely, lovely design, actually. It looks very, very nice. And I'd like to welcome a new listener. It's Decker. He's an old friend of mine, but I don't think he's listened to the show before. So, Decker, it's great to have you aboard. I hope you enjoy the show. Now, going back to the subject of the upcoming guest, I've got to tell you, right, there's one word, if there's one word in the English language that you can guarantee will make my skin crawl, it is psychologist. Now, this is why I'm very, very glad to have Neil Sanders on the show, because what we're going to talk about is something that has affected my life personally. I've had a lot of very bad experiences with psychologists over the course of my life, and some of them I'm reluctant to talk about even now. But I'll bring one of the things I can talk about, because back in Programme 15 I spoke about psychopaths, and I spoke about how this man Centaur got involved in my life. Now, soon after he sort of buggered off, and I thought I was in the clear. I was a sort of a young teenager by then. Someone else sort of latched onto us and became a sort of like surrogate family member, and that was an elderly lady whose name was Isabel, and she kind of, like I said, she kind of took over the role that Centaur had done in my family previously, and she was a constant visitor to the house until she almost became a member of the family, and she was also she was also a kind of figure of authority and reverence. But it was mostly my mum who was kind of fixated on her this time. I don't think my dad felt her in quite the same way that she did. You know, it was very different with Centaur, because both my parents, fell head over heels in love with him. Isabel, I remember, she was a very, very abrasive and very intimidating old lady who treated me like I was a servant whenever she was in the house, and she'd say, she'd snap her fingers and say, "Ben, go make me a cup of coffee." Ben, she had this wheeling Scottish accent. "Ben, go make me a cup of coffee," And there's more. I mean, this is still painful for me to think about. So, forgive me if I'm a little bit incoherent here, but when she was in the house, she made my mum behave in the same way towards me, and because whenever she was in the house, my mum and her used to kind of gang up on me, and I can't really say too much about this, because even after all these years, it's still quite upsetting. Unlike with Centaur, there was no physical abuse from Isabel, but there was a lot of very harsh emotional abuse, especially for sort of like a 13, 14-year-old boy. I don't think I'd put up with that now, but I did at the time. Now, of course, I grew up, and I got a place of my own. I moved out. Like I said, I had my daughter, things like that. Started a job, but it was only many years later, I became conspiratorially aware. I started to get into the subjects we talk about on CMR, and that was when I found out who Isabel really was. I had no idea about this, right? But Isabel's full name was Isabel Menzies Live. Now, that is a name which is absolutely infamous to anybody who has studied the history of psychological warfare, because she is one of the founders of the Tavistock Institute, who worked alongside people like John Rawlings Rees and Wilfred Byron during World War II and afterwards. Now, Isabel died in 2008, and there's several obituaries to her. So we can't find anything more about her from now, but maybe I'm getting paranoid or I'm getting delusions of grandeur, but I can't help asking how and why she got involved with my family. It just doesn't make sense. Now, I don't want to sound like a snob, and I'm not a snob, but my mother was a cinema usherette. She decided to get an education and go to university as a mature student, and that was something you could do a lot more easily in those days than you can today. You didn't need loans and all kind of rubbish like that. Now, my mum studied on a course at Adult Education Centre at Brookes University in Oxford, and then she went to a counsellor's training course in rugby. And she went on to get a job as a counsellor, actually, and that's the job she did most of her life until she fell ill. Now, it was during her studies that she met Isabel, but why did Isabel decide to get her hooks into my mother? I don't know. Of all the people, I'm really, really not sure. I mean, I can't help wondering, like I said, this is pure speculation, but I'm going to share it with you, whether it was something to do with me. Now, because Isabel was very, very different than my brother. She was always very kind to him, but she only picked on me. I wonder if there's something about me which meant she had to sort of like get onto me. I don't know. It's because I was like I said, I went through childhood seeing psychologists all the time, and it's a long story, but maybe my card was marked in some way. Then again, this could be complete nonsense, and I've just got delusions of grandeur. We'll find out anyway. Oh, let's continue. Hospital Porter's pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Hpanwo Radio. Now, I like to play songs that people can sing along to, but I'd be very surprised if anyone could sing along to that properly. That was called I'm the Scatman by an American singer called John Larkin, and he was better known as Scatman John. And it was very much an autobiographical song because John actually really did have a stutter, and he wanted to be a singer, and he got over it through this scat singing, which you heard right now. And sadly, he died a few years ago. But I mean, that's a song I've really never forgotten, and I've always loved it. And I thought I should play that. And who's in the chat box tonight? Well, I've already mentioned we've got my old mate Decker has decided to tune in, which is really great. And we've got other people like Metatron, hi there, and Paul, and Andrew. How you all doing? Lots of anons, which is nice. And Dan's back. That's great. It's great to see you again, Dan. It's really, really nice to see you back. And we've all missed you. And he's got some great videos actually, so I really think are good. Hi, Metatron. Now, Luke Skywalker is here. All right. May the force be with you, Luke. Now, if you don't, if you want to join the chat box, that's great. I mean, you can post anonymous if you want. It's on the page. You just just write in there and press enter. But you can also email me at Hpanwo at criticalmassradio.co.uk and send me an email and I'll read it out if you want me to, and if I think it's a great email, if you've got any information for me you want me to bring up on the show, or you can suggest any guests, then please email me. Also, there's I've told you before about the Hpanwo forum. Now, this is Hpanwo, H.P.A.N.W.O, forum, all one word, at freeforums.org, and it is basically an internet forum where we discuss various Hpanwo-esque subjects, which is basically all the subjects you hear on Hpanwo Radio and other shows on CMR. So why not join that and get involved in the conversation? It's very, very good fun. I think you will enjoy it. Now, sorry about this. So I'm hoping to get as many people as possible involved in that, and it should really take off. It's much better than Facebook. As I was explaining before, I don't have a Facebook group, and I've got no intention of setting one up for the reasons I explain. Hpanwo Radio News. Right, we have some breaking news. Kevin Annett, who I'm sure all listeners are familiar with, has received a death threat on live radio. This happened 2 days ago on the Wolf's Den show, which is another Blog Talk radio station show, and which of course CMR is a part of as well. But obviously we have nothing to do with this particular radio show. Now, the person who made the threat was the son of somebody called Lydia White-Calf. Now, this individual came on the radio show and called for Kevin Annett to be murdered, and he also called for the murder of any Indians in Canada who are currently supporting him. This was later followed up by a threat on a Facebook page. Now, all the details are going to soon be posted on the ITCCS website, so Kevin is going to keep us posted with that, but I just thought you needed to know that, what's been going on. Kevin, you see, encounters a lot of opposition from within the native community as well as among white people. And this has caused some people to doubt him, actually. They say, well, look, even the Indians say he's mad. Well, look, come on, surely the Indians would all be on his side, wouldn't they? But that's very naive, because you've got to realise that there's a massive disinformation campaign against him, using paid stooges among the tribal leaders. I mean, you see, the thing about it is going back to the time of the conquistadors, when European settlers first arrived in the Americas, this is something that all empires have done. They recruited people among the native leaders to act as puppet rulers, and that still goes through to today. There's some chiefs, of tribes who are senators and members of the Canadian Parliament and things like that. And so, it's very, very naive to think that, well, if the Indian says he's mad, then he's mad, Anyway, I spoke to Kevin just yesterday, just before the show came out, and he is safe and well. He is taking the necessary precautions for his safety. He's not afraid, and no one's going to hurt Kevin. I don't think he's got too many people on his side. And the court case is proceeding according to schedule. Right. Well, today is the day of the US presidential election, in case you hadn't noticed. It's very easy to forget it, actually. Well, it's supposedly a wonderful day for democracy. That's what we've been told. This is the way the BBC have actually been portraying it. And, they actually used the words leader of the free world. This is seen as the ultimate expression of this thing called democracy. And democracy is it's a massive buzzword, isn't it? You can almost sing it. Democracy, democracy. Put your cigarette lighters in the air, It's a word with so much cultural baggage. It's unbelievable. And when you think about, what's been done, we have fought wars for democracy. We've fought wars where millions of people have died. Other people have dedicated their careers to it and their lives, like the suffragettes who, about 100 years ago, they were fighting for women to have the right to vote, to get involved in democracy. And, of course, in more recent years, we've had South Africa with the one man, one vote campaign, Nelson Mandela, things like that. And several centuries ago, we had the Chartist movement in Britain, which basically created the electoral system we use today, in most countries in the world have. And we have endured horrors for the cause of democracy, and we have perpetrated horrors to attain democracy. But let's just look at it for a moment. What exactly is democracy? Strip away all the rubbish, right? All the cultural associations. Look at it logically. Look at it literally. What is democracy? I'll tell you what it is. It's the right to put a cross on a piece of paper every few years and choose your government's public relations officer. Yep, that's all it is. That's what we fought wars for. That's what we killed people for. That's what we have had people we've killed ourselves for. We suffered. We've died for this. The right to put a cross on a piece of paper every few years and choose your government's public relations officer. And that is what's going on in the United States right now. Now, it offends people when I say that sometimes. And very often they'll use the fact that there have been wars and horrors and suffering as almost a justification for their offence. But the thing you've got to realise is a piece of counterfeit goods doesn't become real just because you pay a higher price for it. It doesn't turn into the genuine article because you fork out a massive fortune for it. And, you know, as for this presidential election, now you might be therefore say that I just don't care, right? Well, no. I actually do. I'm not completely equivocal on this. I actually hope that Romney wins. I do hope that Mitt Romney wins this election and Barack Obama is kicked out. But the reason I want that is for one reason and one reason alone, right? It's so that I can remake my presidential disclosure video. And for no other reason than that. Because about a year ago, I made a video which was the presidential disclosure video with Barack Obama. And it's generated so much controversy, which I never intended, and I don't think is justified. And the problem is all this controversy associated with this film I made means that the original satirical content has been lost, and it's sort of like gone over people's head, and they haven't really understood it. Now, a remake with Romney would be brilliant, because then maybe I can make the point better, and there won't be this controversy and all this associated with it, and then people will actually look at what I'm saying and understand it. So I think I should finish this segment with just a few words. I just want to say something now about the true importance and the true significance and the implications of the outcome of this election. Right, next item. Right, I'm going to talk about vulnerable truthers now. This is people in the truth movement who are vulnerable. Now, as most listeners know by now, we've had a very, very sad couple of weeks. Paul Higson, who is a keen listener of Hpanwo Radio, has passed away. And we were very, very upset to hear this. And Lisa of the Cry Freedom Show did a very, very moving tribute to Paul on her programme last Thursday evening, which you can get on the podcast. Now, Paul was not somebody I knew very well, and I've never met him, but I did speak to him in the CMR chat box, and we had conversations. He was very dedicated to the truth movement. He wrote stories on the subject, like I do, and he loved listening to Hpanwo Radio and to all the other CMR shows as well. Sadly, last Saturday night, he took his own life after a battle with depression at the age of 35. Deepest condolences to all his loved ones. Now, it's always sad when somebody dies, especially a young man like Paul. But when that death is a suicide, it's doubly tragic. And, you know, I think there are thoughts that go through our heads that are unavoidable. And these thoughts have been going through my head as well, and through my head. And that is, you know, was it something I said? Or could anything I have said and done prevented it? And maybe if I'd known how close to the edge he was, I could have said something that would bring him back. Did something I say unknowingly, completely benign, make him worse? You can't avoid thinking these things. So rest in peace, Paul. I hope we'll meet again somewhere, someday. Now, this sad case is not the first time that somebody with an interest in truth issues has fallen foul in this way, either ending their own life or coming close to the brink of doing so. Now, the best-known example of this kind of tragedy is Rick Clay. You know, but I've been in this business long enough to see other people in similar states: depression, drug and alcohol abuse, relationship difficulties, nervous breakdown. It's very, very common among our community, people within our community, and we need to be concerned about this. And Now, as I've said earlier, I have a problem with psychologists, and I make no secret about the fact that I have been a psychiatric patient in the past. Now, in my case, I think my sort of like conspiratorial awakening and my spiritual awakening actually aided me in my recovery, because I found the truth revelations very uplifting, and they can be too, if they're handled in the right way. And this is what I'm going to come on to now. Because there's no doubt about this, and Andy Thomas says this. He's a very, very good researcher, and he says that everything in society is designed to break our spirit. Now, for truthers, this counts exceptionally because we are the biggest threat to the Illuminati-occupied world. And when you first become conspiratorially aware, very often the first thing you feel is fear. If you suddenly realise that 9/11 was done by the government, that the moon landings were faked, or that the person most likely to kill or maim you is your doctor. That is scary if you've never considered these possibilities before. So therefore, it is vital that we in the truth movement, who have contact with new arrivals, maintain an atmosphere of optimism and hope. I actually think we did that on CMR, and so I think we're already on the right track here with CMR. The very name Critical Mass Radio is a sign of hope, I think. We should encourage newcomers to study researchers who paint a bright and optimistic picture of the future, and give practical advice on what action people can take to progress positively and progress the world positively. It's not all doom and gloom, and you don't have to listen to the doom and gloomers all the time. And the spiritual element to the truth movement must always be emphasized. And there's another vitally important aspect to a conspiratorial education, and that is to give yourself time out. Everybody needs the opportunity to just turn away, just take some time off to watch a football match, or go to the pub with your friends, or take a trip to the seaside or the cinema, and do something that allows your mind to rest from all this, to think about other things, ordinary things. Because if you don't do this, you might run the risk of burning yourself out. And I've made this mistake before. And a burnt-out mind becomes vulnerable to miscalculation, delusion, and yes, dejection. And there's also social interaction to take into account, because very often I myself have found this, that I find it very, very difficult indeed to relate to non-truthers, and vice versa. Now, this can lead to isolation and rejection and loneliness. Now, Lisa makes this point very well in her show as well. We must keep in touch with each other. We must support each other at all times to prevent that from happening. We've got to build a community where we can keep in contact, and we can talk, and we can support, and we can help each other. And, it's very, very difficult to suddenly have to reassess all the relationships you have with other people, especially your family and your close friends. And there are times, I think, where you need to be able to bite your tongue. All right? There's times when it's not appropriate to speak your mind. And only you will know when those times are and when they're not. All right? And don't listen to any of these idiots who try to make you feel guilty and saying, well, you're not trying hard enough to wake people up. You do nothing, And because there are people who do that. There are people who, I've got a comedy character called But You Do Nothing, who sort of like, I made some comedy videos about this subject. Again, there are you can find these things on the Hpanwo blog and on YouTube, because I think if you follow this advice, hopefully, based on my own experience and what I've seen, you'll be fine. I promise. Now, you see, something else happened about the same time which caused me some distress, which was I had a falling out with a close friend of mine in the truth community, who very, very suddenly turned against me for no coherent reason that I found. I could quite understand what she was saying, and I was very upset about this, because this is someone I'm very fond of and I feel very close to. Now, I'm not going to say too much about this subject, because we have apologized. We have sort of made up. She's got in touch with me. She's apologized. We're still friends, But basically, I suspect that my friend is one of these people who may be finding the pressure too much. And if she's listening, I hope she'll take my advice. She'll know who she is. To take my advice that I just described. Take time out. Keep in touch with people. Remember, it's not all doom and gloom. Those sort of basic things. when I next speak to her, I'll be able to talk to her about this as well. Right, I was going to talk about Derren Brown, but I think we're running out of time, so I'm going to have to get on with the next part of the show, which is what I'll do is I'll I'll go into Derren Brown next week, and because there's a lot to say about that, I'll tell you. Hpanwo Radio Space Weather. Right, we have. Let me just get out right. The moon, the phase of the moon, right, is half. It's just gone half. It's rising at 10:56 p.m. and setting at 12:48 p.m. Sunrise 7:08 a.m. Sunset 4:25 p.m. It's getting early, isn't it? I mean, when I first started doing Hpanwo Radio, it was light outside at this time. I had my window open. God blimey. Anyway, sunspots, right, we've got a few sunspots, very well spread out, just small singletons, just across the entire disk. No spotless days, so if you entered the competition I suggested last week and to predict when we'd have a day without any sunspots, I'm afraid you've lost if you chose today. So no spotless days so far. Solar flares. Now, we've had low activity, and this has continued since last week. We've had just two very, very small flares, not even hitting the sea range, some of them. Only a couple going above the sea boundary. X-ray emissions have completely flatlined, and there's a very, very low baseline of activity, which is really dragging and bumping along the bottom of the B range. It's very, very small. It was very, very flat for a while. Now it's getting more jagged, and it's actually picked up during today. It's slightly more. It's been growing slightly more choppy in the last 2 days, and today we've had a couple of long humps up into the upper B level during the course of the day. So it looks like the activity may be picking up slightly today and the last part of yesterday. That's a bit unusual. I mean, because we're actually entering the solar maximum now. This is the part of this is every 11 years the sun goes through a period of very, very high activity, and it's actually due to start about now and go through about most of next year. It's usually a year long. Now, forecasters have expected this solar maximum to be the weakest since records began, which is not that long actually. It's only about 60 years since records began. Now, it might be even weaker than they thought, because you see, what's happened is it looks like the sun is underperforming at the moment. There's been no strong flares in more than a week. Now, the threshold of the solar maximum at the moment is currently like the solar minimum. Now, this is very, very strange, because I was just said that records began about 60 years ago. However, sunspots were plotted much earlier. They've been plotted for several centuries. Now, the last time this happened was about 400 years ago, and it resulted in what's become known as the mini ice age, which is where the River Thames froze over, and people used to go skating and have ice skating races and things on there. Now, does this mean we're going to head into another of these mini ice ages? It's quite possible. I think most people listening to this show will understand that the whole global warming thing is a load of crap, basically, and political propaganda, and there's much more, and the climate change is much more complicated than what they're saying. So we'll have to see what happens with the sun. But, solar prediction is not an exact science, and anything could happen yet. Remember, we had those big flares 2 weeks ago? Well, interestingly, there was what's been known as a coronal hole. It's a big hole that's appeared in the atmosphere of the sun, which happens occasionally, and it's near the western limb of the sun at the moment. What this causes is a lot of it can cause a lot of ultraviolet radiation. So this could have an effect. We'll have to wait and see. But they're basically where the sun's magnetic field opens up and allows the solar wind to escape directly. And now what's happening is this solar wind should be reaching the Earth about now. So keep, if you live in northern latitudes, or even if you're in southern latitudes as well, keep a lookout for the aurora. You may get a treat. You may see it. Geomagnetic storms, right in the mid latitudes. There's a 5% chance of activity, 1% chance of minor, 1% severe. High latitudes, activity 15%, minor 15%, severe 5%. Now, most of this probability of storms is caused by the coronal hole. As I said, there's very, very little X-ray activity on the sun at the moment. No, very, very few flares. Near-Earth asteroids, right. 2012 VD5 is right now passing 1.5 lunar distances away. This is very, very close in cosmic terms. It's only half as far away again as the Moon. So that's pretty close. But the good news is it's only 80 feet across. It's basically a flying boulder. Now, it wasn't on the chart yesterday when I checked, so it's obviously just been spotted, as these small objects tend to be. Now, 2012 UX136, it passed 2.7 lunar distances away on Sunday, but that was 100 feet across. There's a handful of other objects which are passing in single-figure distances between now and the end of the month, but all of them are pretty small. There's only a handful over 100 feet in diameter, so things are looking pretty safe at the moment. And the forecast is still extended to December the 29th. Solar wind speed, 185 miles per second. Density, 0.079 particles per cubic inch. Hpanwo Radio Space Weather. That was Uptown Top Ranking by Althea and Donna, who are a Jamaican duo, and they reached #1 in 1978. They're a real one-hit wonder because they were never in the charts again. Now, I first heard that song actually at a live David Icke lecture. Yeah, it was one of the songs he played before he came on stage. Now, because I know it's one of the songs that David likes. And I actually heard that at the Battersea Arts Centre because I went to see David live in December 2002. Now, I don't know if that is actually ska. I mean, I call it ska, but it may be reggae. I don't know what the difference is, to tell you the truth. But someone told me that's a ska song. Maybe it's reggae. Maybe it's a sort of mixture of reggae and ska. Or maybe it's 1/3 reggae and 2/3 ska. I don't know. But it's a great song anyway, and I hope you liked it.
CMR Critical Mass Radio, in association with We Are Change Manchester and Freedom Northwest. If you want to spread ideas and information and attend meetings and activities, if you believe in freedom and liberty and want to be part of the change, this is the place to be.
Right, now we will have our main feature, which is an interview with Neil Sanders. Very glad to have him on. He's a researcher, he's an author, and he's a lecturer on the very important subject of mind control, which is, I think, something we all need to understand if we're going to get out of this mess, because it's one of the really vital issues, I think. You know, so I've spoken about before what is vital and what's not. This is one of the big ones. And so we're very, very lucky to have Neil Sanders on Hpanwo Radio. He is the author of a book, 2-volume book actually, called Your Thoughts Are Not Your Own. And this is very definitely on my reading list. I'm definitely going to pick it up as soon as I can. But for the time being, we will have Neil on our show. Hope you enjoy it. See you at the other end. Hospital Porter's pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Hpanwo Radio. Neil Sanders, welcome to Hpanwo Radio. Now, you're the author of this book with this very chilling title, Your Thoughts Are Not Your Own. Can you tell us a bit about it and how you got involved on the path to writing this book?
Well, I mean, the books themselves are sort of a combination of like, you know, all the research that I've been doing over the past few years. Is split into 2 volumes. The first volume discusses personal mind control, MK Ultra, the Tavistock Institute in the UK, the use of military and intelligence agency mind control, victims of mind control, potential victims of mind control, and that sort of thing. And then the second book discusses the sort of broader aspects of sort of social mass control, things like how advertising is used to shape perceptions and how the media is used. And then it goes on to things like the music industry and the surprising amount of musicians that have got connections to the military-industrial complex. And then basically rounds up talking about LSD, connections to MK Ultra, and of course the hippie movement, which came out of the 60s and perhaps wasn't the wonderful organic youth movement that it seems to be, basically.
Well, that'd be a shame, but I suppose if it's a fact, it's got to be faced. But mind control, mind control has various definitions, because most people in the sort of like truth milieu know about it, and they tend to think, a lot of them see it as like the Manchurian Candidate, or someone who's programmed as a robot. It tends
to fall into four categories. The first category is extracting information from somebody during an interrogation. So that's either through torture or drugs or hypnosis. The sort of fabled truth drug that everybody's been talking about. And they've been looking into that since about 1947. The second kind is the opposite. It's blanking somebody's mind or wiping somebody's memory so that they can't spill the beans, or so that they can't have this information taken from them by a hostile force. The third type is the total and complete control of the physicality and the mental processes of a person. And although that's your sort of Manchurian Candidate, and though it sounds like science fiction, again, it is actually heavily documented. There's a number of ways that you can do it, and it's been in action since at least the 50s. I would hazard a guess at many years before that, but officially they've been doing experiments in it since the 50s. And then the final sort of mind control is this sort of action management. It's sort of the control of social orders. It's the media, the mass media, the entertainment industry, bread and circuses, as Aldous Huxley would put it. Basically.
Yeah, the kind of this would be like propaganda and sort of perception management and things like that.
Well, there was a wonderful example actually I saw in the news a couple of weeks ago. I forget the girl's name, but have you seen the little girl, the 14-year-old that was shot supposedly by the Taliban?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Malala or somebody.
It's a monstrous piece of manipulation, okay? And it's very, very clever, because even as I'm sort of saying this, I'm aware that some people are going to be going, what, are you having a go at this little girl? No, I'm not having a go at this little girl. But it's come straight out of a Hollywood script. It's to remind you that we are the good guys, and we need to be in Afghanistan. We probably need to be going to Iran and Syria and Pakistan and all these other places because of the sort of thing that goes on. Because of the horrible Taliban who would shoot a little girl in the head purely because she wants to have an education. Come on. That is the most fatuous and ridiculous and oversimplified explanation of the whole thing that I've ever seen. Yeah. It may well be true. She may have been going to school, but I wouldn't like to say who probably shot her. If the incident actually happened in real life at all, it's ridiculous. We see this all the time. The other thing that's been recently in the news is the Pussy Riot thing. This apparently anarcho-punk band from Russia. They're about as punk as Darcy Bustle, right? This is not a punk band. They don't play instruments. They don't have any music. They don't really have a sound political agenda. What they happen to be is a concoction of the US State Department. And it's a destabilization thing. It's to basically plant deep in your subconscious the knowledge, the fact that Russia is a harsh disciplinarian country. If you want to simplify it, they're baddies. They're baddies because they do that. So in the future, if we do happen to invade Syria, or if we do happen to invade Iran, or if we do anything that Russia essentially says, hang on, that's not really on, we can come back to them, safe in the knowledge, safe in our psychological knowledge that, well, Russia, you really can't criticize anybody because look at these three pretty girls that you threw in prison.
Yeah, they'll always hark back. It's interesting you say that because very, very few people have had a look at them. You won't find much about Pussy Riot actually before this incident in the church.
It didn't exist.
Yeah, there was no. You think where were they ever on top of the pops? Did they ever play any concerts anywhere? No. So, I can't think of anyone who's actually ever bought one of their records or anything like that. And then as for that girl Malala, I should thank the Jungle Surfer actually, who's a regular listener to this program, and he's also a very, very dedicated man on YouTube. He actually exposed this himself, and he.
Oh, did he?
Yeah,
good.
He's a very, very good. He explained how Malala's wounds, the wounds she suffered, didn't look very realistic. And I as a hospital porter, should have spotted this myself, quite frankly.
To be quite honest, the incident may well have happened. It's not really about whether this little girl was shot or who she was shot by. It's really more about the sort of cynical manipulation, the tugging on the heartstrings.
Do you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of that baby incubator story with the first Gulf War.
Oh, yeah.
Reagan kept referring back to it again and again and again. And the airmen who actually took part in the Highway of Death massacre, where the retreating army of Iraq was actually destroyed, they were actually they were talking about this actually when they were sent into battle. So they were talking about this baby incubator story to spur them on. And it turned out that it was a lie.
Sort of exposed the story. Yeah, it was the girl that exposed it. Transpired. She was the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to America, and she'd been in the White House. She'd met George Bush many, many times. So how he failed to recognise her when she made that disposition is, I'm not quite sure. My only thought is that perhaps his vision was sadly clouded by the tears that he was crying for all the lost souls. Yeah. But knowing a bit more about George Bush, I don't really. That's true.
No.
But yeah, this happens all the time. Everything that you sort of look at in the media, you've got to see there is an agenda behind it. I mean, it's not it's not a new thing either. To sort of spur people on to fight during the First World War, there were numerous stories of the Germans would essentially cut off the arms and legs of the Belgian children, not because they were a threat now, but so many years later they would not seek violent death wish style retribution on the Germans. So it turned out to be a complete fabrication. Even at the time, members of the Allied press corps were saying this is a lie, and this is not how you win hearts and minds by lying, because you will be exposed. The other one is basically which is always used, and it's not to suggest that it doesn't happen, but again, it's the cynical manipulation of it. Is rape scenarios, mass rapes by soldiers, organised rapes, and such like that. And no doubt, in a war scenario, people's morals are a bit askew. If you've just gunned down 20 kids, perhaps you're not thinking clearly. I mean, I'm not trying to excuse it. It's a horrific thing, and it does happen in war, but it's this cynical manipulation. And I'm sure you can remember when we were saving the people of Libya. I'm sure we're very grateful for what we did.
Oh, yeah.
The story went around that Gaddafi was not only encouraging the rape of women who were opposed to his regime, but also issuing Viagra en masse to his soldiers to facilitate this. A sort of more, come on, that. I mean, I'll put money on it that the people from Viagra paid a serious amount of money to get their product's name on the news so many times. That is how cynical the world is.
Yeah, that's the most obscene. That's the most obscene part of product placement imaginable. But it's true, because but the thing is, you were saying before about how someone was saying, look, back in the First World War, one day you'll be exposed. Don't lie, because one day it'll come out. But the thing is, it doesn't matter, because the propaganda only has to work in the short term. If it's exposed after the war, as long as the military and political objectives are met, then it doesn't really matter, because they can then rely on other methods to keep people focused away from it. So that when they bring in more lies, whether it be weapons of mass destruction, whether it be shooting little kids because they want to go to school, they'll think of something else to use. And unfortunately,
once you've won, you could rewrite all the history books,
or
you could make the documents disappear, or you could manipulate them so that they're more favourable to you, or you can disguise the fact. We can change Werner von Braun's SS file so that he's perfectly legitimate to work for NASA, say.
Yeah, the guy who built the NASA rockets, but they were essentially the same. They were actually the V2 ballistic missiles and the V1 cruise missile that were used to attack innocent people in World War II. So that was kept quiet though. And
I've seen his file, and it used to say Werner von Braun is an ardent Nazi, and then it listed his crimes. And when he was brought over in Operation Paperclip, they edited it, and it says now, Werner von Braun is not an ardent Nazi, and then it lists his crimes. So, they've really gone to town to make sure that it's flawless in its detail.
You could be as much a bad guy as you like, as long as you're not an ardent Nazi, even if you are.
Exactly.
Now, one program that has come up recently, which I've discussed already in this program, is Derren Brown's new series Apocalypse, which was, for those of you who haven't seen it, I mean, it's described earlier in the program, but basically this guy is made, in a nutshell, is made to believe the world has ended through hypnosis and through predictive programming in in his media and among his interactions with other people, he's made to believe that the world has ended, and then he's dragged off to a place where there are people playing zombies. Now, what did you think of this program and Derren Brown in general, Neil?
Well, I think the Derren Brown thing is quite clever in how it works, because in essence it proves and disproves things in the same breath. First off, what I'd like to say is hypnoprogramming is completely real. Again, it's very documented. George Esterbrook did it, Morse Allen did it, Martin Orne did it, although he won't admit that he did it. William Buckley did it. And very, very documented. People were made to give up classified secrets. They were made to plant bombs, even attack people with knives and guns, deliver coded messages. And in all cases, not only did the person not know that they were doing what they were doing, murdering someone or something like that, they also did not know that they'd been hypnotized. So just off the bat, it is real. But the thing about the Derren Brown thing is that essentially, while showing it to be real, it can also be dismissed immediately by saying it's television. You do realise it's entertainment. It's
trivialising it.
Yeah, it does trivialise it, and it also puts it in your subconscious as an entertainment factor. Interestingly, the one that interested me was the Sirhan one, where he got some guy through hypnoprogramming to shoot Stephen Fry. And that started to be related back in certain conspiracy things, forums and the like, and media, as look, this is proof that it can be done. I mean, Sirhan is actually appealing his sentence at present as well. Yeah. But because of that, I found it very interesting that just when it's starting to be taken seriously, then there's a huge media campaign saying that, well, it's fake. You do realise it's fake. It's only silly. It's only a bit of entertainment. He is no more hypnotising somebody than David Copperfield is flying, or David Blaine is levitating. It is just entertainment, and you've fallen for it. And they did that also with his Russian roulette one as well. I saw that one. This is the thing about Derren Brown. I mean, I'm not sure that Derren Brown's got any manipulative agenda to make people not believe in mind control. But it is interesting how he mixes up the real and the admitted fake.
Yeah, I actually read his book Tricks of the Mind, because I was quite keen to find out exactly, what exactly is hypnosis and how do you do it. And the book actually didn't give very, very much in the way of explanation. It gave an awful lot of. He was actually quite cryptic when he describes it in the book. Actually, he says it's not. Yes. It's not my. I don't actually put people into a state where they can be putty in my hands or whatever. Things like that. But then I was waiting for him to sort of go on about what exactly he does do, and I got this distinctive feeling that he doesn't quite understand himself these altered states of consciousness that these people go into, that he has a way of inducing. It's a very, very strange, very strange book, very unusual book indeed.
I think he possibly wants to give that impression. I'm sure he knows exactly what he's doing. It's not hugely difficult. It's it can't be done by your common organism, but given enough time and a lack of scruples, and you can do an incredible amount of things with hypnotism, basically by building up a level of trust. There's two ways of doing it, essentially. Well, there's several ways of doing it, but you can either hypnoprogram somebody to imagine that they're doing something mundane, like firing a water pistol. Okay, and then when you trigger it, they'll fire the water pistol, and lo and behold, you've given them a gun.
And they'll think that it's.
Because the alternative is to do that. You can actually just hypnotise them to shoot the gun, and if you have built up sufficient rapport with your client, sufficient sort of they trust you, then they will go through the actions anyway, safe in the knowledge that there's no way you, a person in authority, a person that they trust, would ever let something nasty happen to them. So it may appear like this is a real gun, but subconsciously they know that you would never allow them to be in that situation. So if you've got a lack of scruples, you can do it that way. I mean, George Esterbrook, basically, who's one of the most sort of revered hypnotists of the time, he's very famous for his authoritarian induction screeds, and he was one of the MK Ultra doctors. He boasted that he can make any man commit murder or treason without his knowledge.
Yeah. Now I'm particularly interested in this area because I know you've written about this before. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is fact. It's historically proven. and this research goes back a long way, at least to the 1940s, possibly before then.
Yeah.
And there's been several experiments involving people, which were government-run experiments, where people were basically, they used these methods on people to see if they could actually create mind control another individual person through control of their mind, and they were more than successful, from what I gather.
Oh yeah.
Give us an example of the kind of things they were doing back then, and how it relates to what's going on in the world today.
Well, I mean, how it relates to the world. I mean, what they were doing is they were doing a number of things, and it was being done by doctors. I mean, that's the way that it relates to today, actually, because, for example, the sort of wiping of the mind and the reintroduction of new patterns, new less harmful personalities, say, that was being done as a therapeutic method. This was being done by doctors, and not just doctors, but the head of the World Psychiatric Organization, Ewan Cameron. It was also that was in Canada, because it was being done in Canada at the behest of the American intelligence agencies, because they knew that it was illegal. So if they did it outside of the country, there was a separation between them. Also, they were carrying it out with the help of the Tavistock Organisation in London at St Thomas's Hospital, under the purview of a gentleman called William Sargent. And in that sense, you could tie it into today, because essentially it is still authorities that are putting forward this technology. You could argue that Common Purpose and Demos and things like that, which are telling you exactly how to think and exactly how to carry yourself on in school and exactly what websites to believe. And Tavistock, who will go into big businesses and offer world leadership and training, which is basically teaching world leaders, politicians, exactly how to be politicians, exactly what things they should read and exactly what things they shouldn't read. So there is that sort of authoritarian thing. There's a very scary thing that I saw quite recently, which is the use of psychotronics. Psychotronics is essentially machinery, like electronic machinery for mind control. And there's this thing called transcranial magnetic stimulation, which is essentially bathing the brain in different types of magnetic fields, and you can get different responses from this. And so what they're doing at the minute is, through DARPA and through Harvard University, they are experimenting and implementing transcranial magnetic stimulation and deep brain stimulation alongside the use of drugs and brain implants, direct brain implants, to be used on soldiers. Now, what this is going to be used for is basically so that they can flip a switch, hit their brain with this magnetic form, wave pattern, and it will be as if they've slept for 8 hours, so that means that they don't have to sleep for another 8 hours. Or they could increase their mental faculties so that they have a sharper response to things, or they could increase their muscle strength. Or, more worryingly, what they can do, and this is where it sort of ties in, this is being pitched as a therapeutic, premeditative device. It can get rid of post-traumatic stress disorder by either removing the sensation and emotion of guilt, or by completely wiping the memory of the actions that soldier took. Now, this is pitched like the mind wiping of the Tavistock era and Cameron and Sargent as a therapeutic method. This is an authoritarian people helping soldiers. It's
wrapped up nicely, isn't it? Nice,
absolutely.
But it is actually really quite chilling. It's quite frightening stuff we're talking about here. We're talking about the ability to change memory, to change thoughts, to change feelings, to change personality.
Yeah.
It's rather like, it reminds me actually of the film by Stanley Kubrick, Clockwork Orange, in which a violent, sadistic criminal is actually taken in, instead of being taken to prison, he's actually put into a mind control program to cure him of his sadistic intentions.
I mean, technique, you know.
I mean, as an aside, I think Stanley Kubrick knew an awful lot more about a lot of subjects than he's ever admitted. But they do come out in the fictional plots of his films, for certain, in many different subjects. But that's actually now feasible, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, the Ludovico technique, which is the one that's used in Clockwork Orange. That is a genuine form of mind control that was exposed. I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head. I'm just searching through my notes saw it. Thomas Narut, that was it. He was an army psychologist, and basically he exposed to a NATO conference. What happened was essentially the CIA had released a press conference that they were going to be admitting to certain aspects of their black operations, and namely assassination plots. And he'd worked on these assassination plots in Naples, I think it was, programming people that had been taken out of military prisons, murderers and rapists, essentially, people with very, very violent tendencies. And they were putting them in these, he said it took about 4 weeks, and they were putting them in front of these programs that were getting progressively more and more violent and pinning their eyelids open, just like in the Clockwork Orange.
Yeah. I was going to say, that's sort of like...
Cmr Critical Mass Radio is a completely non-profit station where the hosts pay to broadcast their shows. The mission of the station is to get as much information as possible out to people about the world we live in, to unite like-minded people, and to try to come up with workable solutions. If you agree with the work that we are doing, then please feel free to help us continue by making a donation on the webpage. CMR is for people who want answers, because now it is our turn.
So, Thomas Narut admitted to a NATO conference to basically about 120 journalists who were all happened to be there. That what he'd been doing had been taking murderers and rapists out of military prisons, and along with the Navy, and they'd been basically programming these people to become mind-controlled assassins. Sleeper assassins, to be placed in embassies, this is his own words, to be placed in embassies in America and across the globe. And this was done through a desensitization. They were showing them more and more violent images, and they were utilizing some very classified techniques that have not come out, I'm sure. And basically getting these people to the point where they could commit violent acts with no conscience, basically, and they said that they could and would kill on command with no second thought, no guilt, no emotion, no emotive response, and almost like serial killers, actually, which is another interesting aside, because if you look at the number of serial killers that have been in the army, a lot of them have been involved in mind control programs and such like that. The serial killer, to me, I believe that in a lot of the cases these serial killers are being used as a traumatizing event on the general populace. You know, the Tavistock concept of using trauma to basically shock a population into what they call a tabula rasa, which is a blank state, or even in sort of personal mind control, there's this traumatic aspect which causes your mind to fragment.
Yes, post-traumatic trauma-based mind control, and
exactly.
Altered state, and so people end up with altered different personalities in their brain.
Yeah. But I mean, what's more terrifying than the concept that someone could break into your home and, for no reason at all, murder you and your family in the most ghastly way? What's interesting is that William Colby, who went on to be the head of the CIA, he was involved and in charge of an operation in Vietnam called the Phoenix Program. The Phoenix Program was essentially a terror campaign. It wasn't against the Viet Cong themselves, it was against supporters of the Viet Cong, women and children and civilians. And the idea was to kill them in incredibly graphic and incredibly brutal ways. And then just leave no trace of their involvement. So when people came back, and they'd basically find all the women and the children from the village all sat around a picnic table, all beheaded.
Oh my God!
With their heads on the plates in front of them. Yeah, you know, this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Mysteriously, they don't want to fight anymore, and it traumatizes them, it shell shocks them. And what I find interesting is that when this stopped, when the Phoenix program stopped in Vietnam, William Colby came home to America and was made head of the CIA. And this is almost exactly the same time that in very specific areas of the country, serial killers were springing up.
Wow, is that a coincidence?
They were doing exactly the same thing. Well, you know, it's a hell of a coincidence if it is a coincidence. I happen to find there's a sort of if you Google why are so many serial killers in the military, you'll get one of two responses. Okay, you'll get, well, maybe it's the fact that the military is such a harsh environment and also a huge employer of people that this is why it happens. Or also you'll get the fact that actually a very small percentage of serial killers are actually militarily trained. I happen to find, it's listed in my book, I think it was 38 of the main famous serial killers just so happen to be in either the military industrial complex, the police, or have undergone MK Ultra style LSD testing.
Yep. So that's kind of a good. So that's, in a sense, they're in a position where they could easily have been selected for this kind of program.
Yeah, of course.
Of course. It's definitely the case.
I mean, it's no secret that in certain black operations and such like that, I mean, Richard Hall talks about this quite a lot, particularly with the Barron and Blackett case. The intelligence agencies will use people that come straight out of prison for certain operations because essentially they have a separate operation and they have a plausible deniability. Well, if that is true, then is it such a far step to suggest that sort of thing is done with serial killers? I mean, this isn't discussed in my book, but this is something I'm looking into at the minute. Is the Charles Manson case? I mean, like, Charles Manson suddenly came out of prison aged 33 with all these techniques, enough money to get himself a bus, connections with the music industry, and he killed the 60s basically.
Oh, goodness.
He destroyed the youth movement. That, along with Altamont and various other things, and the connecting factor between all of these things is a particular type of LSD, which is called Orange Sunshine. And Orange Sunshine was made by a group of a ragtag bunch of hippies called the Brotherhood of Eternal Love. Okay. Now, it just so transpired that there was
what a name.
Well, yeah, it's quite a name. But they were headed up by Timothy Leary, who you may or may not know.
Oh, yeah.
Guru, the LSD guru. And also by a chap called Ronald Stark. Now, Ronald Stark was an admitted CIA agent. Yeah. Also, Timothy Leary was an admitted CIA agent and also a military man from a military family.
Well, this is interesting because Timothy... someone actually said, it was Ian R. Crane actually who said this. So, Timothy Leary was taking a payroll from the CIA, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
No, I didn't, as it happens, but that's that's really quite an incredible...
Every single one of them. Michael Hollingshead, who was one of the... they called Johnny Appleseeds of LSD, went around handing out huge amounts of all completely free, introduced the Beatles and certain other people, Ginsberg and all these important people, MI6 agent, Frank Barron, who was the person that turned Timothy Leary onto LSD, CIA agent, Owsley Stanley, CIA agent, Bear, he was one of the people that basically distributed it, Alfred Hubbard, OSS agent. All of these people, this is the whole thing. If you go through the entire sort of back catalogue, Aldous Huxley, Tavistock Foundation, it's sad to say, but all of these people, of these people that were in...
Yeah, I was going to say... Sorry, mate, sorry.
So, all I was going to say is all of these people that are essentially part of this apparently organic youth movement, which essentially ended up destroying itself. It never accomplished anything. It was a detriment to the Stop the War movement, and it turned into something self-indulgent, and basically everyone turned into lotus eaters as opposed to activists. And it was all backed by the CIA. Cord Meyer, who also helped Timothy Leary, he was CIA. It just goes on and on and on. William Billy Hitchcock Mellon, who's the person that allowed Timothy Leary to produce this huge quantities of LSD on his estate. He himself was he's intricately connected with the oil families and the establishment and such like that. And
did you say his name was Mellon?
Yeah,
Mellon. Yeah, that's a big American establishment family.
They are.
big American establishment family. Now, you mentioned what you said about Aldous Huxley surprised me. I didn't know that he had connections to the Tavistock Institute, but having actually read his science fiction novel Brave New World, I can actually almost see this as almost a kind of cryptic confession on his part. I mean, it's absolutely incredible book.
Absolutely. I actually am a big fan of it. I think it needs to be. It's one of those things. Why has this not been turned into a film and a good film? But anyway, probably because people would go, hang on.
Yeah,
that's a bit near the knuckle. But the reason Aldous Huxley essentially he gave a series of speeches at the Tavistock Institute in Berkeley, in California, for the Tavistock Institute, and it's the famous ones that you might have heard, where he basically says, if we can think of a euphoric drug, a cheap euphoric drug that can be introduced into society, LSD, then your average person can be made to live in a situation that the normal person would really not want to live in. People will put up with a terrible situation for an easy pleasure, and essentially that is what I think LSD was. LSD was an experiment. They were trying to find a soma type drug. I mean, it's not as simple as that. It's just as simple as that. That wasn't the only point of it. There was the other things to sort of divert politicization, and also suddenly you make it illegal, and all these people are all of a sudden not activists anymore. They're criminals. So you can lock them up and dismiss them as bad for society, bad for the kids. But I think one of the reasons, one of the intended purposes was it was supposed to be like a soma type drug that basically fugged people out, so that they didn't care. Was that really what the Love Generation was about? Is this what is that what the intention was? And I'll tell you for a fact that essentially the entire Haight-Ashbury, the entire Laurel Canyon scene, the entire hippie movement was nothing more than a big rat in a maze type experiment. All the drugs were supplied by the intelligence agencies. All the bands were actually supplied by the military. All of them, to a man. The famous one is the Doors. Jim Morrison's dad, Admiral James Morrison, I believe it was James Morrison. Admiral Morrison was the chief commander on deck of the lead boat in the flotilla during the Gulf of Tonkin fake incident.
Well, that's an interesting coincidence. But these people do tend to be the children of military, of senior military officers. I find one. I mean, this is and the idea. Aldous Huxley. I mean, it's highly surprising. I mean, Aldous Huxley, interestingly, was the school teacher of George Orwell. I think that's most people are now familiar with that. But
and the lover of D.H. Lawrence, apparently.
And the what?
The lover of D.H. Lawrence. He was
really?
also in a quasi-Nazi sex cult called the Children of the Sun.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you read The Rainbow and that, it's all incredible. It's it's like and
he did peyote with Aleister Crowley.
Oh, my goodness, it gets deeper and deeper. The mind boggles with all these various connections. But I mean, I myself did a video recently called New Age. I actually it was quite a long video. It's the one of the longest I've ever done on Hpanwo TV. Now, it makes sense in a sense, because what was happening is, like, I think it was the RAND Corporation or the Brookings Institute said that a time would come, or possibly would come, when the youth after World War II were becoming more sort of aware. They were getting involved in sort of like personal spirituality, political activism, and things like that. And they were basically saying a time would come when you'd no longer be able to use the traditional religions to control people. So they had to get inside the New Age and turn it from an anti-establishment sort of independent milieu into something that was controlled by them.
Well, the best example of that, okay, you want to see how they did that? The Rolling Stones. The Rolling Stones doing Street Fighting Man. They've got Brian Jones, who's, for all his faults, was preaching some very radical and very anti-establishment things. And then all of a sudden they get busted. They get busted by a bloke called Schneiderman. David Schneiderman. Do you remember the famous bust where they turned up? Guess what acid they were on at the time? Orange Sunshine, which was only available from the Brotherhood of Eternal Love. Schneiderman had a case full of this, as well as 20 passports. He was American. It transpires. I mean, I spoke about this on Rich Planet about 6 months ago. Basically, I was saying that it was clear that this guy was CIA because of the acid that he was using and because of his passports and his connections and such like that. It came out 2 weeks ago that basically he was part of COINTELPRO. So it was not just the CIA, it was CIA, FBI, in conjunction with MI5, setting up the Rolling Stones for a fall, and basically telling them, you tone this down, otherwise you end up in prison or you end up where Brian is, mate. That's exactly what happened. And just to sort of hammer this point home, what happened? Altamont Speedway. Why did that go bad? Well, 14,000 hits of Orange Sunshine were personally delivered to Altamont by Owsley Stanley. Owsley Stanley's the guy that made this, and by the Brotherhood of Eternal Love, all completely free. Mysteriously, apparently this particular batch was tainted and it was sending people mad. They ran out of Thorazine, which is the antidote to LSD, within half an hour of the gig starting, apparently. And then famously, during Sympathy for the Devil, the Hells Angels stabbed a young black man to death. Now, they will tell you, yeah, but he had a gun and he was pointing at the store. No, he didn't have a gun. If you actually go back and look at the video again, they just felt like stabbing. To my mind, it was probably a satanic ritual or an occult ritual, but that's another story. But essentially,
no, I agree with
utilising the LSD, utilising COINTELPRO, utilising the CIA, and utilising murder, they've taken the Rolling Stones from being this anti-establishment voice of the youth, sexy, deviant sort of force for good, and now we've got Sir Mick Jagger.
Oh, exactly. I was just going to say, actually, it just came into my mind, that a lot of people, I mean, it's a bit before my time, but a lot of people who remember the Stones back when they were young, my goodness, what's he doing? Kneeling in front of the Queen and getting a knighthood.
Oh, yeah.
It's a complete sellout, absolute complete sellout. But, I remember from the Adam Curtis documentary, the whole sort of like hippie scene and then counterculture did move away from political activism eventually, and I think that actually the ultimate goal of the controllers, to get people out of political activism.
There was an FBI. This is a fact. There was an FBI memo. This is a documented thing. This is basically warning police agencies to stay away from Jerry Garcia. Do not arrest Jerry Garcia. Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead is a CIA operative that is employed to lead the youth away from politicization and towards mysticism and drug use. Just another one. Here's another one that people may or may not know. Frank Zappa grew up on Edgware Arsenal. Edgware Arsenal is a chemical weapons research facility, heavily involved in truth serums and Agent Orange and all this sort of thing. That's where Frank Zappa grew up. Okay, and the question that is raised again and again and again. There was a couple of songs, Soldier Boy by the Doors, maybe, and a couple of that, but the artists of that time, they weren't really rallying against their parents in any sort of meaningful sense. They had an inside track. And why were they not exposing these things? I mean, because the argument is, well, yeah, but of course they were rebelling against their parents. That's why they were so fine at what they did. Blah 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 blah. Don't buy it, to be quite honest.
No,
and it's not, and the list is huge. Joan Baez, the Mamas and the Papas, Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix's manager was an MI6 agent. Jimi Hendrix, when he first came to London, was actually sort of ruffling feathers because he was pro-Vietnam War.
Well, that's very controversial. I mean, Joan Baez she sung that song "Play Me Backwards" as well, which is about satanic ritual abuse of children and murder. Which is quite.
Well, she claimed to have been a ritual abuse victim as a child, and her father worked. Joan Baez's father worked at Cornell University, I think, and this was at a time when Cornell was being funded by the Human Ecology Fund. The Human Ecology Fund is a financial front for MK Ultra.
Oh right, this is quite something. Right, we've only got a short time left now, just a few minutes, but now where do you think this has now come? I mean, what do you think is going on in today's world? I know it's very easy. It's easy to see these things in retrospect, and they tend to sort of seep out over the course of time. So maybe in 10 years' time we'll know what's going on now. But what do you think is actually going on in the world in these terms right now?
Honestly, right. we've got an entire society of narcissists. That right? Okay. That sounds kind of aggressive.
Yeah,
and it is. But essentially, Christopher Lasch was a psychologist, and he was a sort of Freudian psychologist, but he felt that Freud had got it wrong. It wasn't hysteria that was the major sort of problem with the world today, but it was narcissism. And he said that, strictly speaking, the narcissist will divide the world into two types of people: successful people, celebrities, and normal people. And they don't want to be a normal person. And if you look at the sort of advertising campaigns, the conspicuous consumption, the bling factor of everything at the minute, even down to say hip hop. I'm a big hip hop fan. We've come a long, long way from Fight the Powers to Be to Nicki Minaj saying I'm a stupid hoe. Right? Come on. Right? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you see what we're doing? What is a hip hop artist now? He's somebody with loads of diamonds on, loads of stupid but naked women, loads of money throwing around. It's conspicuous consumption. There's no intelligence. It's stuff for stuff's sake. What is the most popular television programs at the minute? Things like The X Factor, which essentially gives you success with no effort. Deal or No Deal, which gives you money without actually having to be clever or do anything particular. You have to guess which box it's in. That's it. That is the entire premise of that program. And then we've got things like Towie, Made in Chelsea, where these sort of big, homunculus, subnormal people are there, basically extolling the fact that makeup and drink and being seen in the right places and having as much sex with as many perma-tanned people as you can is the only and best thing in the world.
Yeah. Well, who knows? I mean, in 10 or 15 years' time, you could be doing this show again, and you'll be explaining to me how Trini and Susanna have a on the payroll of MI5. You never know, and possibly. I mean, I've written and spoken an awful lot about EastEnders. I mean, because I mean, I do watch that program. I don't enjoy it, but I do watch the program from an intellectual point of view. And then, I mean, in a nutshell, I've often find there are recurring plot lines and recurring character types.
Yeah, of course.
You tend to get
archetypes.
Yeah, you get certain individuals, certain characters will play in a certain role where they tend to be sort of like, if they're men, they tend to be very, very sort of ruthless and acquisitive individuals who are quite heartless and cruel. But then they're very successful. The women love them. They're very rich.
Yeah.
You know, and you get these other guys who are like really, they're kind of very respectful, very sort of sweet and nice and gentle guys, you know, and they're trodden on and they're treated like dirt. And it's almost, I feel, as if someone is sort of like pointing at us and saying, look, be like him, not like that guy.
Yeah,
you know, and I get that. It happens over and over again, all the way through the series. Sorry?
Well, I mean, the EastEnders thing is interesting because you're absolutely right. And the one thing that I always mention is the fact that you can tell if somebody's upset on EastEnders if they bang back a double vodka, which you then relate back to yourself that, oh, hang on, if I'm upset, maybe that's a reasonable response because it's been programmed into you every single day. In the films, in Hollywood and such like that, they'll show you that the nice guys win. It's all right. If you're just a nice guy, it'll all work out in the end and such like that. Which, you know, like, I hate to say it, but there's a lot of nice guys who are sat around waiting for their chance to win. Do you know what I mean? These are the different roles that they program that you follow, and then mysteriously there's no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. You're just another useless eater, just moving on. And the other thing is, I watch rubbish films. I'm not saying, no, you shouldn't watch this, you shouldn't watch EastEnders because it's programming you. You should watch. How on earth do you think I found these things out?
Exactly. If you know there's a chance it's programming you, it won't have an effect on you. It's when you take it.
Of course. But the other thing is, I don't want it to come across as like a sort of like elitist thing, like you must not watch this, or if you've not seen the message in this, then you're a fool. Because that's the genius of the whole thing. It's like poison. You don't put poison in a sachet marked with the skull and crossbones.
Yeah.
You blend it into someone's favourite meal.
Yes, that's right. Neil, we're going to have to leave it there, but just quickly, your website is, give us your website address.
Yeah, it's brand new. You can get my books available on there. It's Your Thoughts Are Not Your Own, Volumes 1 and 2. Please give it a check. But if you go to my website, it's www.neilsandersmindcontrol.com, That's NEILSANDERS, mindcontrol.com. And there's some videos of me on there and such. So if you've not seen them, have a look. And if you fancy it, buy the book.
Yeah, please do. It's a new website, so it might not come up straight away if you're searching, but after a while it will. All right. Well, Neil Sanders, thank you very much for being on Hpanwo Radio, and we hope to have you back again soon with more news.
Yeah, I hope to be back. Thank you very much, Ben. Very much.
Okay. So bye-bye then. Hospital Porters, pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Hpanwo Radio. And as I said earlier, I will be one of the speakers at that conference, along with 3 other CMR hosts, Mark Howes, Rob Freeman, and David Noakes. Sorry. And so, hope to see you there. Hope you come along. I will be discussing ghosts, the paranormal, UFOs, government cover-ups, including the mind control subject. I think that these subjects are the most important issues that planet Earth is facing at the moment and has ever faced. And gaining an understanding of these subjects, I think, has become a necessity for us all. Okay, we're nearly at the end of the program now. Now, I should make a little correction, because I never got time to talk about Derren Brown. I'm going to go into Derren Brown and his activities next week. So the interview with Neil Sanders was recorded before, so I didn't know at the time. But, that was very, very interesting. I hope you enjoyed it with Neil Sanders. Okay, I want to thank you all for listening. Everybody at CMR, Decker, our new listener, and anyone else around the world who might have tuned in, you're always very welcome. Post in the chat box, send us an email. We've got a lovely new design for the website. I know a few listeners had a bit of trouble getting used to the new functions, but once you're accustomed to them, it'll become second nature, and I'm sure you'll all be all right. Now, right, so just to let you know that tomorrow is Sheila's funeral. Do you remember telling me about Sheila, my daughter's grandmother, who died? We've had a very, very long wait for her funeral, but it is tomorrow. I'll be talking probably after that. I'll be saying a few words probably about the scandal of people who are not having their funerals on time and things like that. But I want to leave it till after the funeral's done. So tomorrow morning, Sheila's funeral. Okay, next week we have Steve Butler on, a very, very interesting guest. Also, coming up in the next few weeks, Anthony Peake, Tony Topping, Kathy Morgan, and on the 27th, we've got Kevin Annett back in. Right, Paul Rippon is up next with the Unpenned Show, and I'm going to leave you with a lovely song by a lady called Nina Smart, better known to you as Izzy. Now, there's a lot of excellent songs coming out at the moment about the subject of chemtrails, and we've featured several of them as major events on CMR. Now, Izzy has written a song about chemtrails too, which I think is another of these really, really good ones. She's a great friend of Critical Mass Radio, and she has a very, very good YouTube channel, which is Izzy Smart, all one word. So I do recommend you go there and watch her videos if you haven't done already. Until then, thanks again for listening. Take care of yourselves. Good night. God bless.
I wake up each morning neath the dismal white sky. It's just about enough to make me wanna cry. Plants just not growing, people get so sick. Geoengineering is the reason for it. Toxic white lines in the sky don't make you feel high. Toxic white lines in the sky don't make you feel high. Aeroplanes are painting white lines in my sky. Not like normal contrails, these are the toxic kind. Barium and cadmium falling to the ground. Plants die when there's aluminium around. Toxic white lines in the sky make you wanna cry. Toxic white lines in the sky make you wanna cry. The media deny it, they class you as insane. They even go so far to say you're mentally deranged. So turn off your TV set and look up where they fly to see the toxic white lines that occupy the sky. Toxic white lines in the sky make you want to die. Toxic white lines in the sky make you want to die. morning neath the dismal white sky. It's just about enough to make me wanna cry. Plants just not growing, people get so sick. The geoengineering is the reason for it. Toxic white lines in the sky make you wanna die. Toxic white lines in the sky make you wanna die. Aeroplanes are painting white lines in my sky. Not like normal contrails, these are the toxic ties. Barium and cadmium falling to the ground. Plants die when these and aluminium are around. Toxic white lines in the sky don't make you feel hot. Toxic white lines in the sky don't make you feel hot. The media deny it, they cast you as insane. They even go so far to say you're mentally deranged. So turn off your TV set and look up where they fly to see the toxic white lines that occupy the sky. Toxic white lines in the sky make you wanna cry. Toxic white lines in the sky make you wanna cry.